What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I got a good one for you today. Now, when you are working on cars, whether freshening up, maintaining, or modifying, inevitably you are going to be looking for parts. And you hear the phrase all the time, you get what you pay for. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's true, let's be honest. But oftentimes there are some things that you can get away with. Now, there are certain things that you don't want to cheap out on. For example, downpipes for an M54. We all know that that just causes problems, whether it's fitment or breakage or whatever the case may be. There are certain things, like I said, that you don't want to buy the cheapest bottom of the barrel eBay specials. Now, there are certain parts that you can get a bit of a deal on and still be satisfied. A lot of times those are things like spoilers and splitters that oftentimes they'll fit good enough, right? But you won't waste a lot of money if they don't work out, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got one for you today, and I wonder if it is an exception to the rule. Now, what we have here amongst the rest of the parts strewn about is the Amazon special catch can for the BMW N54 335i. Now, there are a couple of other options for you in the $150 to $180 to $200 plus for catch cans. They're good, sure, they're good. But there's some that are much cheaper. This one in particular, $48 on Amazon. Upon initial inspection, it actually feels to be a pretty decent quality. It's got some weight to it, not super heavy, but you can tell that it's not super cheap. I already pre-fit the bracket on the strut bar, and it fits. I think there were some complaints that that didn't work, but it grasps perfectly and fits nicely on top of the catch can. This hose looks a little bit short to me, but we'll find out. But nonetheless, the point of this video is not to do an installation. There are plenty of catch can installation videos on YouTube specifically for the BMW 335i. You don't need that. You can find those all over the place. What I want to do today is install this myself. I might film some parts of it if there's anything that's giving me trouble or any tips or tricks or pointers that I come across. But more importantly, I want to come to a conclusion by the end of this video, by the end of this installation, of whether or not a $48 catch can from Amazon is worth it to you or not. Sorry, I got a mess. I just finished up with the injector project. I'm doing this upside down because it's hard to do with one hand, but I wanted to unscrew this first. We know the good catch cans are often baffled, at least, or filtered and baffled. Like I said, there's some pretty good weight to this. It feels like it's decent material, and it actually resembles a lot of the other higher dollar catch cans that you see on the market. Here is the BMS catch can. Note the baffle on the left side compared to the Amazon special with the baffle on the right side. The only other difference, $100. It is baffled, not necessarily a filter, but it is baffled. There's not a whole lot to say about it. One thing that I would miss from the more expensive catch cans is the dipstick. Be able to check the level of the oil that's been caught in the can without having to unscrew the bottom. You know, whatever. I can't complain. Is it worth an extra $100 to get a dipstick on your catch can? The price is great. Like I said, it feels like it's decent quality. It has a nice gasket here to help seal everything up. But unfortunately, for the price, you don't get any written instructions. They're not all that difficult to install, so, you know, it's easy enough if you have any mechanical aptitude or know-how to figure it out. But there's no labels or anything on the input or the output, the in and out. So it leaves you having to figure that out on your own as well. And like I said, we already kind of looked at some of the things that are included. We have the bracket here that does actually fit on the strut bar, a couple of hose clamps, and some of our hoses that actually feel like every other silicone reinforced hose that I've seen. Whether they fit properly and are of the proper length, that is yet to be determined. So I'm going to go ahead and get working on installing this here on the 335. Already cut my zip ties and got myself some clearance. So obviously we're going to be working in this area here. In a previous video, while doing the injectors, we went ahead and changed the PCV valve here as well, so we're all good to go there. But we're going to be, oh no, a little tab is broken. Hopefully that doesn't hurt us. But we have to pull this off and work our way over here. So speaking of work, let's get to it. Okay, well this comes off not too bad. It clips, it sits like this, clips on the top and bottom, so you just kind of have to get those pried up a little bit. But the reason I'm showing you this is because it becomes very apparent immediately that there is no question of whether or not you need a catch can on these N54s. You do. Look at the oil. It's not like pouring out of here, but there's definitely evidence of blow by. So it's important that we get a catch can in line here. And that just makes me even more anxious to get the walnut blasting done. So little heat gun, a little bit of heat applied right to this area, and you can just get a hold of it and pop it off. Be careful not to squeeze this and break this little clip while you're trying to separate these, but little heat's all it takes. We need to reuse this. It was a pretty snug fit. Clamps probably not even necessary, but I went ahead and used it anyways. They supplied it, so why not? I'm gonna wait to put this in. I'm gonna do the little J hose first, which is going to go right here on this guy, which we removed the other hose from. So this is the hose, the part that goes back into the intake. This is going to technically go to the out port on the catch can, and if it's not labeled, that's usually the port that has the baffle directly below it, because the whole point again is to not suck stuff into the intake. So it goes into the can, into the inlet tube on the can, or the inlet nozzle, bung, fitting, whatever you want to call it, and then it'll come out the fitting with the baffle on it to prevent any of that gunk that landed in the can to come back out into the intake. So this goes there like that and end up over here about. I got the other end off as well. Hopefully this catch can works now, because we have a casualty. These get very brittle, and it makes them even more brittle if you use a heat gun. So just keep that in mind. Try not to ruin the pieces too badly. Okay, got our ends on. Install. So our first real issue is the length of this J hose that we kind of referenced at the beginning. So it's not long enough here to get us far enough back to where we, we could really pull it up tight and mount it up here, but it's really tucked in. It kind of rubs on the tubes here, and a little bit on the lines there in certain spots. So we need to get it moved this way, and really the only way to do it would be to add hose with a coupler of some kind, or we could trim this part of the hose and lose about an inch and a half, which would move the whole thing this way, an inch or an inch and a half. And then we have these, the long ports here, so we can back it off a little bit and gain us another maybe 1/4 of an inch. How far back would that get us here though, really? The hose clamps they supply are garbage. So I had to trim about this much, maybe 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches off of the J pipe, and then another 3-4 inches off the straight. It's so weird that the J pipe is actually could be 3 or 4 inches longer, and then the other straight pipe could be 3 or 4 inches shorter. They should just switch up the material quantities a little bit, and this shit'll actually fit proper. It's all installed now. The portion that I trimmed off the J pipe was here because it was too short on this end. So by trimming this, we were able to bring the whole pipe that way to give us enough. And we still couldn't get all the way to the end, but we're clamped on pretty well. And then the straight portion, like I said, we cut off another 3 or 4 inches just because of how tight everything is. It just didn't quite seal up tight there, no big deal though. It actually, the fitting comes out to here. So we got a nice clamp on and we're all solid. But you see what I'm saying, you know, if they would send this one a little bit shorter and the J a little bit longer, it would be just fine. The bracket works okay. I do wish that the hoses were a bit longer, like I said, because we could end up in a perfect little spot there or right here. But instead we're tucked in tight here. I'm hoping that it doesn't rub there. If we get enough vibration, I can knock it with a little force, but hopefully it stays still. Butt it up to it. Other than that, it's a pretty, relatively simple install. You're still gonna have to trim the hoses on the expensive one. You're still gonna have to try to work it out to fit in a tight location over here. If you actually look at the differences, specifically the BMS catch can with the Amazon catch can, they look exactly the same except for the etching or the stamping on the top of the BMS one. But the baffle looks the same. The top is one solid piece. There's not fittings that are screwed in to the catch can itself. So there's a lot of similarities, but a major difference in cost. I'm guessing the tubes fit a little bit better with the BMS one, but again, we got this one to work. Maybe took an extra 20 minutes of effort, half an hour at the most, additional effort to what it would take you to install a typical catch can. So it's not that bad of a job, and you just kind of have to ask yourself, 20 more minutes for an extra $100? No, I'll spend the $48. Now, I guess what we got to find out is if this thing actually works. But it's going to be better than the stock setup. I know we're not going to be recirculating that oil back into the engine. Lord knows how gummed up these valves are already. I can't wait for the walnut blasting. The big overall question. Just from an installation standpoint, an inspection of quality of materials and the hassle that it takes to install, so far, without knowing if the thing actually works, I would say the $48, $50 catch can from Amazon, as long as it's this one, there might be other options, as long as it's this one, I would say is worth a shot, to be honest with you. I mean, if you're looking at $150 to $200 for other big name brand catch cans, and they install essentially in the same exact way, you still got to do a little bit of trimming. They might end up in a little bit more of a convenient location because the hose length is going to be adequate. You just got to decide if that extra $100 is worth that. To me, taking a little bit extra effort, kind of manipulating some things and moving some things around to get it to fit. It does fit there. I mean, it's in and it's tight, so I really can't complain about that. I mean, $48, geez, seems like a good deal. But like I said, we'll find out if the thing actually works or not. But it doesn't look too bad. Everything is tucked back in there. Now we got to get the cables all moved over again and zip tied. That's going to be the one issue, is getting everything over here and zip tied and tidied up. Probably could have tucked them in behind everything. I should have done that beforehand, but I guess I didn't know how all this was going to work out. But we'll get this all cleaned up and looking pretty again. Of course, I'll link this catch can in the description below. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I get to all of them, essentially. Some quicker than others, but I do my very best to get to each and every comment. So thank you guys for participating, your constant and continuous engagement. It's very much appreciated. So thanks again. We'll see you in the next one.